being a Christian for me is almost like a way of life. I've never known anything different. You don't need a time or an hour, that God works with people differently. And also just going through difficult times just to hold on to his promises. My name is Louise van der Bijl, and I was born in Cape Town, South Africa. I grew up in South Africa and left South Africa when I was about 22, and I went to Namibia. I joined Youth with a Mission, and that's where I met my husband, Johan. And we lived there for a while, and then we also lived in the United States, where we raised our children. And I once heard a man say that he started going to church even before he was born. And I thought, I need to remember that, because that is so true of me. I started going to church before I was born. So my parents were Christians, their parents were Christians, and as far as I know back, my family were always believers. I was about 10 years old when in my Sunday school class, our Sunday school teacher said to us, you guys are coming to church and your parents are believers, but have you actually decided to be a follower of Jesus? And that day she led us in the sinner's prayer, and I prayed it, but something happened in me that day. I was just filled with this joy, and I realized that that day was a very special day for me when I decided that I am going to commit my life to Christ. I was very aware of the fact that I'm a believer and I need to live according to God's law and work on my relationship with him. Yeah. Wow. Now, that was true for me. So God works in different ways. So some people might grow up in a Christian home and they would just always follow Jesus. In a sense, they don't need a day where they decided to follow Jesus. And other people who are not believers, they can have a very specific day and time where they commit their lives to Christ. But of course, saying that I have been a believer all my life, at times, you feel closer to the Lord, you live your relationship is better with the Lord, and then sometimes not. I can remember when our kids were little, you're so busy working, raising kids, making a living, that you almost forget to work on your relationship with the Lord. Yes, obviously there are ups and downs in your lives, and there was some really deep, dark valley experiences. But for me personally, I always ask myself, how am I going to look like when I get through this valley experience? Will I be standing wanting on the other side when I get through this? So I really hold on to the promises of God, where we read in his word that he is faithful and just, and that he's always with us, and that he will never leave us or forsake us. Now, yes, there are times when you're in this deep, dark valley and it is as if God is not there, and you don't hear him and you don't experience his presence. But, in our ladies' Bible study, we're studying Daniel at the moment. And so this just reminds me of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace, where they said, God will save us. But even if God does not save us, we will not bow to the idols. And for me, that is such an amazing example of how we as a Christian should live, that even if God is silent, he has a plan for our lives, and we don't know what it is. So if we stay faithful to his commandments, he is with us, and he will carry us through those difficult times. And he has really been very faithful in our lives, always. When I look back, I love to tell the story where Johan and I, we were in an airplane flying from Texas to South Carolina. And just as we took off, the pilot said, we have to make an emergency landing. There's something wrong with the airplane. And I just had this amazing peace that came over me. And I turned to Johan and I said, this will be a great day for the two of us to just die together in this plane crash. Because, you know, our kids are grown up, they're taken care of, we have lived wonderful lives. And that feeling that I had that day is just with me all the time, that I know, you know, I'm totally at peace. Whatever will happen with me in my life, God is there, and He will carry us through. Obviously, we are here. Nothing happened. The plane didn't crash, and God was faithful in that too, that He protected us. Yeah, so 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And initially, it was, of course, it was a shock. You know, they didn't expect that. But looking back, I can just see how God's timing was so perfect, because it was just at the start of the pandemic. And so 2 days before there was a lockdown, and I mean, hospitals were kind of shut down at the time, I went to the doctor and she just said to me, you know, we are in big trouble now because the hospital is in war mode. They're not taking any patients. And she said, well, just give me a few minutes. And so within 10 minutes, I was in the hospital, and they did a mammogram, and they hardly did the mammogram. They basically took me to the next room where they did a sonar, took me to the next room, did a biopsy, and then they said, go have lunch and come back and go see the surgeon. So everything happened within a few hours. And it was amazing. I walked into the hospital, and the staff were just standing there. They were like happy to see me, happy to have something to do. But yeah, and when I saw the surgeon, he said to me, you are very fortunate. All my cold cases are canceled. I will do your surgery the very next day. And yeah, so that was absolutely God's perfect timing for me. And yeah, and then I had to go through radiation, which was also an amazing experience. We had really good friends that offered us their beach house, which was close to the hospital, so we didn't have to drive an hour every day to get to the hospital, which was also nice. We didn't have to be locked down in our house. We could be out every day. But through that all, I just knew that God had a plan. And one day I just realized, yeah, we go through these difficult times, but going through that, I can identify with so many other women that have gone through the same. And I can support them now, really knowing what they are going through. So in a sense, yes, it's a difficult time. Yes, it's trying. You don't know how you're going to get through it. But God is faithful, you know. He was there. Well, daily, I'm very dependent on the Lord. You know, being in a different culture, different language, you're very aware of your actions. So yes, we start each day in prayer. You know, praying that God will be with us and use us in special ways as we interact with people. Yeah, in the Netherlands. Yeah, so I'm very dependent on God's guidance every day, just being filled with His Spirit and reading God's Word, studying His Word. Yeah. Being in the Netherlands is an amazing privilege. We just love the people, and they are so welcoming and accepting of us. And we just pray daily that the testimony of our lives will make a difference to the people.